thank you very much for joining us today. So this virtual small talk is called Collecting Transcona, Connecting Manitoba. So before we begin our walkthrough of our brand new exhibit here at the museum, I'd just like to take a moment and ask that you consider supporting the museum. You can support us by donating or becoming a museum member. You can also support us by staying in touch. So you can visit our website, www.transconamuseum.nb.ca. We're also active on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and a blog. You can also join our mailing list. So it's a monthly e-newsletter that we send out once or twice a month with updates on events and programs and all wonderful things that we're doing here at the museum. I'd also like to acknowledge that the Transcona Museum, we reside on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Koji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, as well as the homeland of the Métis Nation. So as I just mentioned, this talk today is all about our brand new exhibit that we have on here at the Transcona Museum called Collecting Transcona, Connecting Manitoba. And I'm going to stop the share and we're going to head on over to our live walkthrough of our exhibit here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Milana Hareda, and I'm the curator here at the Transcona Museum. So I want to welcome you all for coming to our virtual walkthrough of our new exhibit, Collecting Transcona, Connecting Manitoba. We thought this might be fun as we're not really able to do our usual opening celebrations and opening events when we open a new exhibit. So we thought, why not take you through a virtual walkthrough? So that's what we're going to be doing this afternoon. Jennifer and I will be stopping at various points in the exhibit and talking about some of our favorite artifacts, things that we really like or that we find very interesting, how they connect to the exhibit. This exhibit was planned for last year. This was our Manitoba 150 exhibit. However, due to COVID, we decided to postpone the exhibit and just continue with the exhibit we had on last year. So this exhibit, it is a Manitoba 150 exhibit, and we are actually looking at 2020 and COVID-19 and everything that happened. That's also featured in this exhibit. But we're doing it this year. We just put it off a year. We're just rolling with it, which we have to do. So I'm just gonna flip my camera around if this works. Ooh. There we go. That's how I flip my camera around. Okay, so this is the main gallery here at the museum. This is what we refer to as the front gallery. So as you come into the door, we do have our welcome stand, which we have the introduction to our exhibit, Collecting Transcona, Connecting Manitoba. So the exhibit is highlighting the history of Transcona, but also connecting to Manitoba 150 and the history of Manitoba. So it's Transcona's history, but it's also the history of Manitoba. And as we move forward with our new normal, let's take time to appreciate the history and the future of Manitoba and its peoples. So as we get started, we're going to move to the right and have this fun device, which we're still learning how to use. So we're going to start with this case right here. So all the cases are divided into 2 or 3 different components. Now, an interesting thing about this exhibit is there are a lot of things that haven't been on display for a long time, or maybe have never been on display, at least as far as we can tell. So we're going to talk about some of these things and what they mean to the history of Transcona, as well as history of Manitoba. So Jen is going to talk about our first case here.
So this case here, we have divided into shoe lass, Manitoba 100 time capsule, and lighting. So the shoe lass we decided to bring out because they don't really get brought out all that often. So those were one of the collections that we really want to bring out of the collection. And we also have a lot of people who reminisce about some of the local shoe stores that used to exist here along Regent Avenue West. So we thought that would be a really great tie-in to the business community here along Regent Avenue. In the center, we have the Manitoba time capsule, which is actually on loan from the Transcona Library. It was sealed on December 31st, 1970, set to be reopened on January 1st, 2070. So another 50 years from now.
I wonder what's inside.
Who knows? We also have another tiny little small time capsule here that was from the Central Hotel. I'm not sure if you can see it very well, but it was in this tiny little jar that they found during construction. I think it was around one of the door jambs. So it was brought here and donated to the museum.
And those were the contents. The letter and the dollar bill were the contents, was it not?
Yes, there were one or two other items that were in there, but they are on display elsewhere.
Oh.
And then lastly, lighting. So we have a considerable amount of, lamps and candlesticks and lanterns and light bulbs and all that fun stuff in the collection. So we thought it'd be a kind of a fun juxtapose to have, iron shoe glass, very sturdy, robust, alongside more fragile items such as, lamps with, beautiful colors and floral details and
Delicate.
yes.
Some are delicate and some are obviously more industrial. My favorite one in particular is, there we go, there's my hand. This one right here, and it's like a cage for a light that then you could like hang from somewhere. But to me, yeah, I think it's really interesting. There's a very interesting look to it.
And while we're here, because this is the first one at some of the cases, we decided to do really fun, bright colors, but all the mounts that the objects that I'll have left, we really want to showcase the items themselves and have them stand out within the cases.
And we forgot to mention earlier, if you're joining us on Facebook, please leave any questions you have below in the comments. At various points through the tour, we'll pull out a phone and we'll look to see what any questions and comments you have and we'll answer them. And then at the end of the presentation, we will be answering questions as well. Okay, so moving over, this is our pump organ that we have here. And this was actually donated to the museum, and it's from the St. Francis Roman Catholic Church, which was formerly on Dugald Road. Now, this item you may have seen on display because this item is always on display. It is too large to be put into storage, and we don't have anywhere to store it at the museum. So it is always on display. So we have to work it into every exhibit. But it's really interesting. It was just a couple of years ago that we actually got the name of the church where it was from and are getting more history on that as well.
So our next display case here is one of Alana's favorites. So
yes. We don't often put our natural history collection on display, so we were very excited to do that this year. And what better way to talk about the connection between Transcona and Manitoba by looking at some of these natural history items, specifically our birds' eggs that we have right here. These were all collected by Stephen Quelch, and he is also the collector who collected the butterflies and moths that we have in the collection. But these were collected when he was a little boy. Most of them that are on display come from Birtle, Manitoba. So again, it's that Manitoba, but within Transcona connection, because Stephen Quelch lived here in Transcona. He was one of the first board members of the Transcona Museum. He was a school teacher and a principal here in Transcona. So definitely connected to Transcona's history, but also Manitobans. Then we have a Bohemian waxwing bird specimen. My personal favorite that we have in the museum is the fetal beluga whale in a jar. This one is a bit of a head scratcher as to why and how we have it in the collection. Best I can determine, it actually came in at the same point as our archaeological collection. So we actually have a little YouTube video, a fun one, on our YouTube channel where we sing Baby Beluga to it, the Baby Beluga song. We also have one bison horn here. We have a weasel, a vesper sparrow, a horse vertebrae, a loon, and we actually use this loon in one of our education programs, and a nest just in the back. So this is just a small sampling of our natural history collection that we have, but it's stuff that doesn't get on display very often, so it was kind of exciting to bring it out this year.
We're just switching back and forth on the camera here.
Yep.
So our next case is wood planers and music. So starting with the music, we have a radio, a trumpet, going even back further in time, we have phonograph records and, an arm from a record player, phonograph machine. We have songbooks, more modern radios. So a little bit of everything.
And when don't you need more cowbell? You got a cowbell right there.
Tonk, tonk, tonk.
And Transcona has a history of music. There's been a lot of musicians that have come out of Transcona. There was a Helen Blas music studio. There was a Transcona Festival of Music. A lot of artists, musicians have come out of the community. So this is just a small sampling.
And right beside it is the wood planers, small collection. So, they are used to even out a piece of wood as you're working with it. So we have quite a few antique examples here, some more modern ones along with their fittings and blades. So just something very different. Once again, something that doesn't really get out on display all that often, but something very, tangible and something also very ephemeral, because music is also heard, right? It's not just objects. So,
and then above this, another item that we always have on display is our Max Katz dry goods store sign. This was a sign that was actually hanging in front of the store. A lot of people recently have even been coming in and sharing their stories and their memories about the Max Katz store that was around. So the next case we're going to talk about is this one, which we have some of our geological samples in, as well as patches and pins. So starting with the geology samples, some really interesting things that we have here. This large stone is 483 to 443 million years old. This comes from the Ordovician period. And this is Tyndall stone. So the same stone that you'll see on the outside of many buildings here in Manitoba, but this is just a big hunk of it. And it actually has a fossilized sunflower coral in it. And so this was actually found in a gravel pit in East Transcona in the late 1950s, early 1960s, and was brought into the museum in 1976. It's very large, it's very heavy, which I found as I was carrying it down the stairs. But really interesting, because Tyndall stone is everywhere. We have Tyndall stone on our building here. There's Tyndall stone on many buildings around the community, around Winnipeg and Manitoba. So it's a Manitoba stone, and here we have a nice big hunk of it with a really interesting fossil. And it actually, just when you're looking at it and you don't know what it is, it looks a little bit like the head of a dragon from one of the dragons from How to Train Your Dragon. Now, right in front of that are these really interesting samples that we have. Didn't even know we had these in the collection until I found them. This is actual samples of lava. There wasn't really any information in our database as to where the samples were collected, but we have samples of lava in our collection. So that was some rock core samples, some more fossils, some geodes, a stalagmite, and then this other rock, which is very interesting. It's in two pieces, but when you put them together, it actually looks like it could be a moccasin that's been petrified. Don't know any more about it and how that could happen, but that one is really interesting. And then, moving over from like old hard history to community history, we have a lot of different patches and pins from various community groups and organizations on display. So from scouts to guides to sports to CN, curling, just community pride on display. And we have a fair number of patches and pins. So it was just going through and selecting some interesting ones. And there's actually a Manitoba 100 pin in the display case as well.
Don't think I can zoom in, but it's right beside.
Between the dinosaur and the Transcona Community City of Winnipeg patch.
Yeah.
And then as we move over into this case, we have a large number of hats in the collection. Most are women's hats, but a fair number of men's. So we wanted to highlight some of those in the collection. This is the typical High Neighbor Sam hat. Some women's hat, a tam, a men's like more formal hat, because there was a period in time where people wore hats significantly more than they do today. Then we're moving into trophies. So again, this is community history, a bunch of different trophies. This is the big one here. This is the Transcona Association Football League trophy. This one down here, this is Knox. Now this is a silver trophy, but the silver has actually been over polished, and so it's actually hard to read what it is. But this is an annual competition then it was won 3 times, and this is football as well. We have a curling trophy here. This little one right here, this has the Mayor Olive Cup. And when it was donated, the woman who donated it said, I believe it was her grandmother who won it, and it was related to like sports activities. And then we have a Transcona horticulture trophy there as well for homegrown vegetables. And then moving from trophies into some of our silver collection. We have a bit of a silver collection here at the museum, ranging from, home items to department stores, things like this one picture. Let's see where my finger is.
And
this one here.
Sorry, the reflection is somewhat hard to see through glass.
This is actually like a Hudson Bay piece. There, that little one at the very front. What's really interesting down here is this is a salt and pepper shaker. And I enjoy this one because looking at it, you can tell which one had the salt versus the pepper. The salt was actually this one right here, and it's actually caused additional corrosion on the top of the shaker. And that's the salt reacting to the copper metal beneath it. Because all of our silver is electroplated silver, which means it's just a thin layer of silver over top of another base metal. Often that could be nickel, it could be lead, it could be copper. So when you see this green corrosion, that likely tells me that that's copper underneath. And you can see on many of our samples, if it was over polished, that electroplated silver is gone. And so it's just the base metal showing through. But very little of our silver has ever been out on display before. So this was fun to put out.
And then this is another artifact you've probably seen if you visited the museum. This is our plow. It's a design based on a similar type used in the Ukraine. So one wheel is actually smaller than the other, and that's because the smaller wheel would sit in the furrow as they are plowing the fields. So it would be even as it was moved along the field. It is always out on display because it is very big. So it is permanently on display or occasionally hidden behind other display cases, depending on the exhibit.
Now we're going to move to the platform here. And on the platform, we have a number of our chairs. So we'll start with this one here. This chair, it's a swivel chair. It actually comes from the Henderson family. So Fraser Henderson, who is a descendant of the Selkirk settlers, Hendersons and Samuel Henderson. And our records indicate that this belonged to his grandmother, who was born in 1852. The Hendersons were some of the first families to settle in this area. And Fraser Henderson took over the farm in 1890. His sister married J.R. Armour, who we have some of his collection on display as well. So it's a very connected community. After he retired, Fraser moved into town. He moved into Transcona. So, and it's estimated this chair was built around 1870. We actually have very little information about this chair, but this one is one of Jennifer's favorites.
This is the first mayor of Transcona's chair, and his name was Colin D. Maxwell. I'm no relation, I get that question all the time. But he was the first mayor of Transcona in 1912. He was only in office for about 6 to 8 months, and at the end of the year, he said, "I'm going to retire the mayor's chair." Those in the community, said, "Please, re-elect yourself for mayor." No. So the community actually gave him the mayor's chair as a gift, as a thank you, following his short term in office. It stayed with his family for a number of years and moved back and forth across the country from I went to Quebec, and then I came back to Manitoba, and then went to Ontario, then British Columbia, then back to Manitoba in 2018 when it was formally donated to the Transcona Museum.
Yes, and that's a picture there of, still learning how to use this, folks. Colin Maxwell, the first mayor here in Transcona. And then our other chair here is a little child's rocking chair. It was handmade, and it was made in Denmark, likely made in Denmark and brought to Canada by the family in about 1870 or 1880. And the family moved to the Springfield Transcona area in 1923. And the donor had memories of herself and her siblings and other family members sitting in the chair over the years before it was donated to the museum. And again, with this chair, it's an occasional chair, and that's about all I know about the chair. There's no records in our database. Throughout the exhibit as well, we have some large images. So there's a bit of a glare on this one. I'm going to try to get a better angle. Yes. So the top map here, and this was the sign that used to hang out on front of our building when this building was actually a municipal office, because when it was first built, I'm going to take a quick little trip. It was actually built as the Bank of Toronto. And after the bank moved out, it became the Transcona Municipal Office, and then the home of the Transcona Museum. So this map up here is just a section of a larger map, but Transcona isn't even on the map. The communities of Monte Vista and Sethwin are on Dugald, but this map was made before Transcona existed. This is from a City of Winnipeg map where the town of Transcona is on it, and it's been highlighted orange. So you can see the boundary lines of Transcona, but significantly smaller than what it is today. And then this map shows the boundary lines of the city of Transcona. This says 1957, which is odd because we didn't become a city until 1961. So this date might be from something else, but it's part of, I believe, an insurance plan. So the different areas, we can look up houses and find information on that. Okay, so now we're going to move into the hall gallery. Potentially the connection might not be great. We're just going to say that now because when this was the bank, this was the vault. So it is built a little more sturdy than the rest of the building. So Jen, why don't you go in and do the one side first, and then we'll do the other side.
So we'll do this side first. So this part of it is our butterfly and moth collection, the Stephen Quelch Lepidoptera collection. We have over 8,000 specimens from around the world in this collection. Most of them are stored in special made cases so that they are not overly exposed to light and other conditions, so they stay in great condition. They are 60 to 80 years old, some of them, so they are very old. And we rotate these every couple of months so visitors can see new specimens on display. And we're actually going to be doing a small talk on this collection in a few weeks. So hopefully you'll tune in for that talk as well. And then in this small section here, we have some of our coins, money, and tokens. So we have a dime coin piggy bank right there. We have a coin dispenser. These scissors were used in the opening ceremony of the Bank of Toronto.
No, the Transcona Credit Union, when it opened up in the building where the Biz is now, but in 1960. So the Transcona Credit Union changed its name to Casera Credit Union. So these were the scissors that cut the ribbon that opened up that bank in 1960.
We also have some commemorative coins, such as the commemorative coin for the Battle of Vimy Ridge. Those blue, I'm not sure if you can see, but those blue little tokens there, those were meat ration tokens that were used in the Second World War. We have a number of them in the collection. Some banknotes from the Bank of Toronto, when banks used to be able to actually print their own currency.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have some sampling of coins from around the world, right on this side here. And then in the middle, these are tokens from the Transcona community. We have one from the High Neighbor Festival to be used at the Dairy Queen and the Bullring Drive-In. We have a token for the Transcona Hotel. We have another one from a bakery. And then that one is from the Transcona pool room.
So on the other side of the hall gallery, we have put back on display some of our firearm collection. The firearms, majority of them come from Norman Mercy, who actually lived in the municipality of Springfield, but his collection was donated to the museum in the 1990s, like in 1990. And actually this hall gallery was revamped at that time to be able to display the firearms. So a number of different examples. The one that's quite interesting is the second one here in the middle. That's actually a World War I rifle that was used by Allied forces. Here we go, that one right there. A little 22 down at the bottom. This one is just this one, the one above the rabbit, actually, well, in my family, we call them rabbits. It has a octagonal barrel, which is just kind of interesting. We have a handheld like musket here. So just some of our firearm collection. And then as we move over onto this side, a juxtaposition of like hard and firearms, and that is art. So we have the J.R. Armour collection. So I mentioned him earlier. He was actually married to Fraser Henderson's sister. But he worked at the Transcona shops. He trained the apprentices, and after he retired, he traveled immensely. So we have some of his tour books. We have over 20,000 slides from images he took on his travels. That is actually one of his cameras that was donated to the museum. And this is one of his original artwork pieces. This is actually here in Winnipeg, and this is Grant's old mill, Cuthbert Grant's mill. So this is out in St. James area, just on Portage. This right up here just has some of his recollections and memories about the railway, working in Transcona and apprenticeships. And he actually designed, going through some of the records, he actually designed the running boards for the 2747, which is our largest artifact. So this is just a very small sampling of the immense collection we have from him. Now we're going to move into the back gallery.
Oops, and we'll probably swing this way first.
Okay, so this is just a little bit about our remembrance. We typically have a remembrance display always here at the museum. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we've had to put our books of honor. We had to take them off display. And in those books, we have the names of everyone we know of from Transcona who enlisted in World War I, World War II, the Korean War, as well as information on those who were killed in action, but also telling the other stories that Transcona is connected to during the war efforts. So Canada's only armored train was built here in Transcona. There's a couple images of it here. It was after the attack of Pearl Harbor. Canada was worried that we were potentially vulnerable for an attack. So this armored train was built top secret at the Transcona shops. Short story is it didn't really work, and it was dismantled without ever firing a shot in 1944. During the First World War, part of the Transcona shops actually became a munitions factory where they built 18-pound shells. So this is an image of some of those shells being packed onto a railway car for shipping. And this image here is of workers actually making 18-pound shells. And then this is the ship's wheel from the HMCS Transcona. So it was a ship named after the community. It was a minesweeper ship in World War II. And after the war, the community was offered the ship's wheel as like a token, as a memory? No, token remembrance. They offered it to us. So this is a ship's wheel. Back when the museum was first being started, I guess the community had been offered the ship's bell. At that time, there was no museum, so the community said, no, thank you. We don't really have anywhere to display it or keep it right now. But after the museum was being not constructed, but being formed and developed, established, they decided they wanted the bell. They really wanted the bell. So there was a letter writing campaign that basically went all the way up to the Prime Minister. However, after the war, the ship was decommissioned and it was used by the RCMP. So the RCMP had the bell at their museum in Regina, at the RCMP Heritage Center. So after much letter writing and conversations and probably some negotiations, they made us a replica. So this is a replica of the bell. Now the bell is actually in Winnipeg now. It is at the Naval Museum here in Winnipeg. So if you want to see the actual bell, it's at the Naval Museum downtown. And the image we have behind the ship's wheel is this is actually part of the crew that worked on the HMCS Transcona. And way down at the bottom, there was a mascot. So that's Skipper, the mascot of the ship, the puppy.
Okay, so another, well, as you mentioned, we were supposed to be doing this exhibit last year, but then unfortunately COVID happened. So as we were redesigning this exhibit, we decided to have a small COVID display. So we brought out some parts of our collection that we actually had seen, early stages. I don't know about, you guys, but I was doing a lot of baking. So we have some, a breadboard here, old beaters, bowls. We have some yeast, baker's yeast. Don't know if it's that great anymore to use.
I don't think that yeast is alive anymore.
No. And then, other hobbies that people were trying, gardening. So we have some seeds from the collection. Toilet paper. We all remember the hoarding of toilet paper early on. So yes. We have a couple, we have quite a few rolls of toilet paper in the collection.
We do.
And then, other aspects. PPE, masks, both, purchased, homemade.
Oh, sorry. Was getting a phone call on my cell phone at that time, declined it. Okay.
So yeah, purchased homemade varieties, fabric varieties, or even purchased fabric varieties, and hand sanitizer. And then up top, one of our board members, actually, she started doing these diamond point paintings. So she's completed at least 20 of these, and this one is on loan to us from her. So.
And if other members of the community of Transcona have items related to COVID, so crafting things that they've made, things that they did during COVID, we want to actually put some of that stuff in the collection. So in the future, we can tell the story of 2020 and COVID on the effect of Transcona and our community. So if you have anything that you would be interested in loaning or loaning for this exhibit or donating to the museum to have, let us know.
So another one of the big display cases here. So this one is children's toys and dishware. Two things that don't always go together.
Children and
children
dishes
and
that,
bowls.
yes.
But we do have a mashup of the two with a children's dish set. So we have some pieces from Joe Blostein's store at the back here in Transcona. We also have, fine chinaware. We have a metal cup, fine china, pretty glassware from like the 60s. So this was fun to put together.
There's a plate that has the 2747 on it. And Jen, why don't you tell me about that plate?
Oh yeah, so this one is a Great Depression movie theater plate from the former Apollo Theater in Transcona. So apparently you'd go and get tickets and then you'd be entered into a draw and then you could win old dish sets.
dish sets or groceries. It was a way to get people to come into the theater on a consistent basis, because if you kept going back, you might get the set. You got a plate today, you might get a bowl tomorrow. So,
and then on this side, as we mentioned, children's toys. So there's an erector set. Also, I know it as Mecano. Up in the top here, a doll. We have this is called a Diablo. This wooden piece right here, and the idea is that you catch the center. Well, it looks like a spool or bobbin to me, between the two wooden sticks. Pick a jacks, tiny little toy cars. That right there is a lenticular tilt card. So if you look at it from different angles.
okay, see if I can make it happen. I can't zoom in, so it might not work. Over here, and I can't zoom in, but I'm gonna hit the glass. Yeah, the image changes. The rabbit pulls out of the hat.
So we have actually one or two of those in the collection, which is really neat. So this was one of the last cases I did, and it was really fun, actually. It was fun doing these mashups of objects.
Mm-hmm. And then on the wall here, we just have some more images from the collection. This is typically our kids' fun zone, but again, a lot of the items we had to take off display because of COVID, because they're high touch. But we did put a fun thing about flamingos for Transcona in this case here, some of the flamingos we have in our collection. So we have one of the I Heart Transcona shirts, a couple flamingos, a couple pins and badges, and Einstein and Indigo have made it into this case. So this is where they're going to be hanging out. And if you don't know who they are, they're sort of our unofficial mascots we have here at the museum. Sometimes they get up to shenanigans online on our social media. So they're just chilling in here this year. And then as we come over to this area, so we have some about our display about the 2747. It was the first steam locomotive built at the CN shops. It is our largest artifact. It is our heaviest artifact. It's not in the building. It's on display in Rotary Heritage Park. But since we acquired it in 2015, we've been working very hard to preserve it. So last year, we actually were able to get the blast cleaning and repainting done on it. So it has all new paint, which is very important to actually protect the base metal underneath. And we're working on the next phase of the project, which is a protective structure for the 2747. So that will be launching soon, our capital campaign for that. On this side here, CN is connected to the community and Transcona. So we have these CN manuals. We have a number of them. It would be in the hundreds. So we just have a selection of them on display as well. And then over here we have our archaeological display. So this is a rotating case with various lithics, projectile points, and tools, lithic tools in here, so stone tools. And this map corresponds to the areas in which they were collected. The collection was all gathered by one individual, Cecil Patterson, and then he was looking to sell his collection. The Transcona Springfield division purchased it. It traveled around the school division for a couple of years, and then it was loaned to the museum and later donated to the museum.
So you can rotate the case and see a number of objects on display here.
It comprises about 3,500 objects of cultural and historical significance pertaining to Manitoba's First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities. And then we also have some in the collection from several regions in the United States. And then this is a display sort of explaining what an archaeologist sees. So within an excavation, the different layers of the stratigraphy or the layers in the ground, and how an archaeologist can interpret that and what the different levels mean. The further down you go, the older an item is, just with the history. And then we're looking here. So within the top level, you might find these. And then we're in the proto-historic period, so post-contact or historical period. Proto-historic to period, late contact period, and then we even come down here to middle pre-contact, and then early pre-contact. So how that's determined, and it's through the artifacts, through the cultures that made them, what was left behind by archaeologists. It's all human culture that is uncovered. They're not looking for dinosaurs or anything like that. That's paleontology. Archaeology is human culture history. And then just here explaining what stratigraphy is and how they determine age for items, provenience, and then just some of the tools an archaeologist would use.
And last case.
Yes.
You're going that way. So this is our RCMP uniform. It was donated in the 1980s, and it is always on display, just so that
We are one of the few museums outside of the RCMP Heritage Center that is allowed to display an RCMP uniform. So we have it here, and it was a Transcona resident who was a RCMP member who had the uniform donated to the museum. So when you visit the museum, we do have contact tracing information that we're taking. We have limited capacity, and there's still social distancing. So you'll see our keep 6 feet between each other and things like that. So Jen, are there any questions?
no questions on Facebook, but if you're still tuning in, now's the time. This is our question and answer period. And I'm going to quickly head on over to Zoom and see if there's any questions that pop up there.
Great, I'll just turn the camera around. And so, yeah, thanks for joining us on our virtual tour of our exhibit this year. And like we said, if you have any questions, let us know. And if you have a question later on,